Hello, and welcome to yet another episode of the Back to the TARDIS podcast, the podcast where we take a look at every single episode of the 2005 revival of BBC's Doctor Who. I'm Jeff.
I'm Skylar.
And I am a large rat with testicles for eyes.
And today we are discussing Series 3, Episodes 8 and 9, Human Nature and the Family of Blood by my dude, Paul Cornell. This is an adaptation of a 7th Doctor book under the Virgin New Adventures line, which had a very similar setup, and it's a pretty faithful adaptation, like in terms of thematics and overall like plot and setup. It's a little bit different in some places. It's expanded upon a bit more because it's like a full book and not like an hour and a half of television. And it's obviously a bit darker and more mature, like everything else in the Virgin New Adventures line. But yeah. And I have actually read the book. I didn't get around to rereading it for this episode, so I just jotted down notes on things I either remembered being different or that I could figure out were different by piecing together like plot summaries and stuff on the wiki. So yeah. So the setup, the idea for this episode is that the Doctor is barely in it. Instead is John Smith, which is the Doctor after having used this chameleon arch to become a human. And how that makes him a fundamental... Like, you can tell that it's the Doctor, and I think that's like, off the bat, I think, like, the real kind of... When you think about it, the most stellar piece of acting in this episode is how David Tennant manages to create a character that is so convincingly a part of the Doctor and yet at the same time absolutely not the Doctor.
There is some just overall stellar acting in this episode.
Yeah.
The other one I want to point out is God, what's his face? The shitty guy with the shit-eating smirk.
Baines, yeah.
Baines,
I
right.
believe the actor is Harry Lloyd.
Yeah, that performance is just absolutely wonderful, and you can tell the actor is enjoying every second of being the universe's most smug asshole.
Yeah,
Absolutely. And even the kid is Ferb. But yeah, child acting. When you nail child acting, you know you have a good script and a good cast.
So I guess starting out here, the other thing is I actually like took a whole bunch of notes this week. So yeah, we are going to go through the plot sort of in order. So yeah, we start with sort of this in media res intro where they're clearly running away from something. But they don't really explain that the Doctor has to become human yet, and they kind of hold off on that for about 20 minutes. No, more like 10, but yeah, they hold off on it for a bit, because it's sort of framed as like a dream that John Smith is having. Of note here, obviously here it's because he doesn't want the technology for the family to run into their hands, and because, obviously, as we learn later, he's trying to give them a chance to leave and run away. But in the book, Seven doesn't be... Like, they're not the family of blood, but they're still, like, shape-shifting aliens who die quickly, who want the ability to regenerate and basically have infinite life. But they seek him out once he's already human, like he doesn't really know about them beforehand. And the reason why Seven becomes human is because he literally cannot comprehend it or not he has a level of detachment, and I think in the previous VNA novel or something, like someone who was close to his companion at the time, Bernie Summerfield, dies, and knowing Seven probably dies because of his plans and manipulations, and so he gets like really depressed and decides to become human for 3 months to try and understand her better. Which is interesting because I think this story, the testament to how good this story is because this story works fantastically both with 7, who is a very alien doctor, and with 10, who is a very human doctor. Like, 2 completely different interpretations of the character, and the story works really well with both.
It's just, a generally very solid story. The way it plays out is super good. Just like the overall concept is definitely really interesting, and all the like actual execution of it, in this episode, but I'm assuming also in the book, is just very good. I'm saying good a lot, but it's just carried out very well, and the way the plot plays out and the characters in it are very compelling.
Yeah. I will say, I believe, like, RTD actually used this example as of an episode to say that, like, he did have, like, input and did edit some scripts. So some of the stuff in here is based RTD, but a lot of it is because of, like, a lot of this is in the book in some form, just translated to screen a little bit differently for a different character and a different companion.
Yeah. I'm guessing a lot of the stuff he put in was like the anti-war sort of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like there's a bit of an undertone to it in the book, but yes, the anti-war stuff is way more prevalent here, and I'm not sure if that was Paul Cornell or if that was RTD, but it is more present here. Oh, another funny thing, this is just a complete random coincidence. In the book, one of the plans that the shape-shifting aliens that are the villains in the book version try and do is one of them tries to approach Bernice and claim that he's the 10th Doctor. And this is a complete coincidence, but it is a thing that happened.
Nice.
And I will say one of the things that I think is good about this adaptation is obviously in the book Bernice, while a woman, is not a woman of color, and she isn't a servant and is much sort of more distant and just kind of lives in town and occasionally keeps an eye on him. But thankfully, RTD / Paul Cornell actually had the ability to point out, unlike some other writers this season, that being a person of color and time traveling is potentially seriously problematic and dangerous.
Yeah, it's just it plays out. I mean, I saw what Skylar said in the group chat about how it definitely can come across as kind of like gratuitous and like just sort of, why did they choose to set it in this time period? Is it like just to have that sort of like gratuitous racism? But it's definitely done like a lot better than in the Shakespearean code, where it's just like,
I mean,
bro,
the right
answer
is because this is when the book was set.
Yeah. That's fair enough. Yeah. And like and it's definitely handled a lot better than bro, just be confident it'll work out.
Yeah, I'm glad they didn't just go the route of just replacing Bernice with Martha and not acknowledging that in itself changes a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I also like how it's not, like, obviously there's antagonistic characters who are coded as more racist, but even the nurse and John Smith to a certain extent still have that.
There's casual stuff that's just there because that's what the time period was like.
So if you're gonna do it, and don't have it just be like, oh, only the cartoonishly evil people are racist, because but
yeah, definitely.
I memean, the nurse character's line about, like, you couldn't be a doctor, was just like, It is just like a much more realistic portrayal, and it's not the like I mean, like you said, it's not just like
it's not
only
Rosa.
The cartoonishly evil. Yeah.
Where like everyone is just shown as cartoonishly evil, racist, and like, oh, this is a thing of the past, whereas this portrays it much more realistically as just this underlying like part of existence for these people.
Yeah.
That just permeates everything of how they were brought up, how they were raised, how they were taught. But yeah, we're introduced first to Baines, who just, yeah, we mentioned this earlier, but I have it in my notes as shitty white boys sell the act way too well.
Like, you can tell that guy knows exactly what his role is supposed to be, and he just leans into it. Like, I'm genuinely curious, like, what they had in the script as like a description of him.
Yeah, if they directed him to do that, or if he just came up with it on his, like, some of the mannerisms, like how he holds his head and glances.
Or like the little smirk he does and everything.
And how, like, he kind of looks at everyone sideways.
Yes.
And has his head like permanently tilted to the side slightly.
The way he really sells it is just so good, because, you know, you have him at first, like, before getting infected, and he's already like a sniveling asshole. But then he like gets replaced, and clearly, like,
and there's a sense that there were some of the mannerisms that were still there when he was a sniveling asshole. They're just amplified when.
Yeah, and it works so well because it's like, it's, you know, this member of the family who, like, clearly holds themselves to be superior to humans and stuff like that. And they're just, you know, finding in the memory of this person, like, this certain haughty way of acting, and, like, just turning it up to 11, counting doctor numbers, you know, just sort of really leaning into it. And it works really well, because it's at the same time, it works in the sense of the story as an alien infecting an already shitty person holding themselves to be superior to everyone else. And there definitely is like a bit of based RTD in there, of like commentary of like, this is like what these sort of aristocrat, highly educated British boys are like. It's definitely very well done in that sense. And just, the way he carries it out is so good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he feels like a corpse, like, much more so than, like, the sister is creepy.
Oh my god, yeah, he's got the vibe of, like, Vincent D'Onofrio in the first Men in Black movie.
Yes.
But, like, it's like, it's executed completely differently and not like,
yeah.
But yeah, like how he looks, he looks like someone who's just kind of wearing someone's skin and it's not fitting well.
Yeah, and this was an observation I kind of made, like, half jokingly, but it's funny how, like, well the way that the family functions and how they are kind of matches up to the motivations of the Roberts master. Is like, can't live long, wants the doctor's body, possesses people, and makes them look and do weird shit. Like, that's probably, like, completely coincidental, but I was just like, hey, you know, pulling good stuff from the old times, like.
Yeah. Just to back up a bit, I have it in my notes of Martha, you know, like, the servant who worked with Martha is like, in a few years' time, boys like that will be running the country, and Martha's like, 1913 they might not, and I just put it in notes as, no, Martha, they still will.
Oopsie doopsie.
Even if 90% of the British male population gets fucking killed in World War I, they still will.
Yeah. Winston Churchill time.
Yeah. Also, I made the note here of Human Nature. There's an audiobook of it that is read by the actress who portrays Bernice Summerfield in the audios. But there hasn't been like a full cast adaptation of it like there has been of some other VNAs. And part of the thing that I was wondering is, I wonder how well Sylvester McCoy would be able to pull it off, because when he talks, he's just an eccentric kind of person. And of course, he worked in vaudeville for years before he did Doctor Who. And I wonder if he'd be able to pull the part of John Smith off as well as Tennant does, because obviously it's a book, so from a writing standpoint, there's a great differentiation of John Smith, where you can understand it's got some of Seven's characteristics and eccentricities, but has far, far more compassion, and you feel that divide where he doesn't want to become this scheming, Machiavellian, uncaring, cold figure again. In the writing, I wonder if McCoy would be able to sell it as well. Also, the Journal of Impossible Things is the first on-screen confirmation of yes, all the prior Doctors from Classic are here, especially 8, because 8 is very prominently featured.
I'll just quickly comment that that's pretty efficient exposition too. They do it a couple of clever ways. There's one point in the middle of this episode where it kind of gets a little lazy in my eyes, but for the most part they do good at staggering it and making it appear naturally. And for what effectively is an amnesia story, kind of, in that we don't know what's happened and why he's not the Doctor, it's pretty well done.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's good stuff right there with the journal.
Yeah.
Yeah, the journal as a plot device is definitely very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. Oh yeah. Also, yeah, we're introduced to Joan now, and John Smith does a fall down the stairs. There's definitely this sense of you can tell that there's just these tiny, it's like the Doctor has been badly JPEG compressed into a human being. So you get tiny bits of the personality and who this person is, but none of the detail and none of the scale.
That's such a good way of putting it, that he's been JPEG scaled down, and not just once, it's 3, 4 or 5 times.
Yeah, with quality turned to low and art super artifacting.
Yeah,
seeing... it's Joel Sauce, or no, Vine Sauce, that's what his name is.
Yeah.
Vine Sauce Joel, yeah, when he does the Windows XP destruction and has... Yeah. Yeah.
It's so weird seeing Tennant struggle to talk fast when he's talking with Joan, and then you get later to where the Doctor's back and he's just talking at 1,000,000 miles per hour.
It's you can tell that his brain starts to heat up, and then it hits a cap that it set back, that has been set in there, and it goes nope, slow down.
And so I noticed that he's very spacey and forgetful.
Yeah.
It's almost he's exceeded the again, using computer metaphors. It's
he's maxed the RAM out on his human brain.
Exactly. He's compressed way too much information in there, and there's very little space left to store new information, and so it's constantly hitting a limit. But because all of the information is inaccessible to him at the moment, it's basically a bunch of dead space taking up space in the RAM, that it's unusable, or it's inaccessible to him, but it's taking up space.
One thing of note, I think both Baines and Latimer like both were on Game of Thrones. I wouldn't know because I kind of refuse to watch the show, but apparently like they've both been on there.
I know Latimer has. Can't speak to Baines.
But yeah, then the aliens arrive, and there's this green light, and Baines gets possessed first. And this is where I put in my note of the aliens in the book are different, and I don't think they have quite as much of the horror of the family, though that's also partly because they're not acted. And I think, like, just the concept alone of the family is like, oh, okay, that's mildly creepy, but it kind of relies on the acting of the personalities themselves. But there is an interesting subplot of there's more of them, and they're shapeshifters, not like body stealers, I believe. But if I remember correctly, there's a subplot of one of them actually kind of starting to enjoy being human, which I understand why it was cut for time, because there would be no good way to fit it into an already like plot heavy and well-paced episode without making the pacing fall apart and not giving it the proper time it deserves. But I do think it is an interesting thing because I think it fits very well into the themes of the story.
Henry Lloyd played the older brother of Daenerys in Game of Thrones, which is like almost the exact same kind of person, just this like sniveling, haughty asshole. So it's like, yeah, I see it.
Lol. So yeah, Tim finds the watch and looks into it and takes it and keeps it with him. This is a note of in the book there's like it almost kind of leaks Time Lord powers into him a little. Like he literally survives being like hanged by some of the other shitty white boys because of the respiratory bypass system that Time Lords have.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wait, that's a thing I was wondering. They never say why he has that like sort of telepathic like precognitive thing, right? It's just like
I don't know.
It gets like more intense with the watch, but he has it before that, so I'm just like, fuck it, I don't know.
No, but that was before he got the thing.
Yeah. He has the thing where he can like predict what the other person's going to say.
Yeah. Anyways. Oh yeah. Then we first see the scarecrows, which I don't remember being in the book, but it is a very cheap and very effective effect. Like, it works. It's just scarecrows, but it works.
Yeah, I'm curious how they actually did that.
I think there's later a throwaway line that Baines gives. It's like, these are my soldiers. Do you like them, sir? And it was just like some technobabble bullshit. And I was just like, the atmosphere is so great, I don't even care.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't matter. They're just creepy scarecrows. That's all you need.
Oh, I mean, that one interaction between like the Baines alien and the headmaster is so good. Like how he obsessively calls him sir just to mock him. It's so funny.
Yeah. And yeah, we get the scene where they're all being taught to fire guns, and yeah, I wrote this down. Where did I write this down? Oh, yeah. I wrote this down later, but I had the thought that I feel like in some ways part of the horror here isn't just the body-stealing aliens, it's the school itself. And that it is a tool of teaching imperialism and teaching children to fight in pointless wars and teaching them that because they're upper class enough to go to this school that they're better than everyone else.
Oh god, the line where they're using the Gatling gun and the headmaster is like, "Oh, hibbledy-dibbledy boys, those are the African tribesmen." And I'm just like, bruh.
Yeah, there's even a line... Go ahead.
It is just the whole, like, you know, casualness of racism thing. About, like... Oh yeah, those tribesmen are targets are tribesmen from the Dark Continent.
Yeah.
It's like, damn, bro.
And even like stuff like, oh, you know, hopefully there's like a right, proper, just war. I forget, he says some stupid shit about that, of like the romanticization, and just like, I used to be a history major. The amount of romanticization, like all throughout history, but especially like in that era, is just like, holy crap. Like,
yeah,
super
and
messed
the whole
up.
exchange is like, the whole exchange is very telling because, you know, they're shooting a Gatling gun at these targets, and he's like, those are tribesmen, and then, you know,
Latimer himself says, like, they just have spears. Isn't this kind of fucked, bro?
And then the headmaster is like, "Oh, you're gonna tell us how wrong we are, huh? And then he's like, "Oh, I hope you end up in a war someday." And it's like, bruh. And because, you know, the thing is, that's actually what they did. There was, God, I forget who is it that said that, like, you know, at the end of the day, we have the Gatling gun and they don't. In reference to, like, colonial wars in Africa, because that's literally what they would do. They would just mow down, you know, opposing soldiers with Gatling guns, and it's like, damn.
And also the fact that when Latimer refuses to shoot because circumstances, he's just like, oh, let's beat him, and then like John Smith agrees. And I like how you don't see it, as odd as that sounds, because I think that might be, like, too much and, like, too triggering for a lot of folks, but, like, just the fact that happens and that's so normal. It's just like, oh, you didn't dehumanize on command. You know, go get beaten. It's like, yikes.
And the fact that John Smith agrees with it is like, an especially important little aspect. It shows, like, how distant he is from being the Doctor at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. While being human, he still has some of the abilities of the Doctor, but by being human, he's tied down to the period in which he lives in.
Exactly.
He doesn't have the ability to transcend cultural attitudes of an era. Even though, obviously, as a show that is made by humans, those still creep in.
Yeah, he has the pros and the cons of humanity, which, especially for a Doctor like 10, is like, that does all sorts of fucking stuff. It's great.
Also, I just realized we skipped past it, but the scene where Martha is watching the video of the Doctor's, like, rules, they actually filmed that whole thing, and there's, like, some serious ones, there were some that just got cut, there's some where he breaks the fourth wall and just makes random nonsense sounds to keep the video going, so they have stuff that they can fast forward on. But most importantly, the "don't let me eat pears" joke originated in the original book and is canonized in New Who here. This is where the pears joke came from, everyone.
Epic.
Doesn't 12 reference that in his regeneration speech?
Yes, he does.
King.
And the funny thing is I believe the novelization of Twice Upon a Time was written by Paul Cornell.
Kings everywhere. Love it.
I wonder what would happen if he did eat pears.
Yeah. He does in the episode. It's not, like, really called upon, but he does eat a pear in the episode, I believe.
Damn.
Yeah. So yeah, then you get a scene with Joan and the Doctor. Interesting note here: this part of Joan's character, the Boer War stuff, actually belonged to a different character who was just completely cut out of this version. Which again, I understand why the character was cut out, because there isn't a place for said character in this. But it's someone else who is a man who Bernice Summerfield hangs out with. And it was his uncle who fought in that battle, and also that person turns out to be gay and lives with another minor character in the book. So that was pretty neat, because that was in the 90s. But yeah, I understand why the character was cut out and why this was folded into Joan, because you're adapting a whole book into an hour and a half of television. Shit has to be cut. Oh yeah, also, I don't know if this is the first joke of Gallifrey being in Ireland, which made its way into the last finale, the Series 12 finale, but it's definitely an early example. I can't remember if there was like a reference of that in Classic or not.
It does sound kind of Irish, yeah.
Yeah.
It's especially a good moment where he's like, yeah, I learned that in Gallifrey. And she's like, where's that? And he's like, I don't know. I think Ireland probably. And it's just like you're starting to see sort of the lapses in his memories and where the TARDIS is sort of painted over, but when you look at it closer, you realize there's nothing there.
Yeah.
Also, in that scene where he's talking about the names of his father and mother, aren't those literally the names of like the producer and
Sidney
first
Newman
showrunner?
and Verity Lambert, yes.
Yeah. Easter egg.
Yeah. Yeah, and then Martha finds them making out and is like, oh shit, and has a moment. I will say, I feel like while there is like a hint of the underlying romantic plot tumor that is just like 10 treating Martha like shit, a lot more of it is treated like, oh fuck, you're getting attached to someone, this is problem, and not just you're making out with someone that's not me. Which is good, because I feel like they could have upplayed that other angle more, but I like that throughout the most of it, Martha is like, no, that's not why I'm freaking out. There's other, more problematic shit going on here.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, if that was Rose, she would have just, like, fixated on that.
Yeah. God, this episode, like, if this episode had Rose in it, they'd all be dead.
No, I'm
just gonna say it.
I was thinking that when I might be skipping way ahead, but when her maid friend comes back and it's actually the family of blood now, and she figures out
or the hostage situation,
yeah, she figures out how to say like fake shit of just like, oh, she doesn't realize these foods I'm mentioning are like disgusting in this context. I need to go. Like, that's such a simple thing, but like really nice moment there. Martha continues to be awesome despite the shit hand she is dealt in these 2 episodes, because like, holy crap.
Yeah.
God, I'm just thinking about Rose in this situation. She just like, she would get so mad at the nurse and be like, hey, things in British accent, angry, and then like freak the fuck out and then ruin everything. And then just like open the watch immediately. Like, I don't even think she would make it like a week without opening the watch. Let's be real here.
Yeah, and then the episode would try and pass it off as a good thing. Well, I mean, it probably is a good thing, but like, you know what I mean.
Moral complexity versus, yeah.
Anyways, side note, in the book, so you know how the girl has the balloon? In the book, the balloon can kill people.
Bruh.
I'm sad now.
It would have been really funny if they just briefly showed that off, but no, they don't show it off in the book.
How does it kill people?
I I don't know, she could just command it to pursue and kill people, and there was like this hint that like it was like connected to her in some way.
That sounds like a C-list horror film with a $5 budget, and I'm here for it.
It reminded me of It. That's what I was thinking of the whole time whenever I saw her.
Yeah. But yeah, then we get this scene where Martha, like the maid becomes one of the family of blood, and Martha immediately figures out something is up and fucking books it. Which, again, this is why I love Martha. Just so capable. Like Martha is relatable in the sense that, like, she's like, oh fuck, what am I doing? But, like, at the same time, she's still kind of capable. She's just forced to improvise. I
will say it's kind of interesting that this and 42, right? Yeah, are like back to back, since at that point it's just like, I have faith in this person that I will be saved, and here like that's taken away even more so than the last one. I don't know if it probably wasn't planned like that, because like production and stuff, like you never know in the end, but that's like a cool lead-in and evolution of the character.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see here. Oh yeah, I have a note in here that like, even with like this obviously being toned down somewhat from the novel, where like I'm pretty sure like the weapons are much more grisly, and I'm pretty sure they like blow up the school.
Bruh.
Yeah. Like, it's even with it being, like, toned down for TV, this is still one of the darker episodes of the series.
Oh, for sure, because they just bomb a fucking village, like...
Yeah, and they just kill people constantly. Like, man, remember when this show actually killed people off? Remember when, like, you could actually, like, consider most, like, enemies an actual threat?
God, Chibnall is just like, yeah, I have the most powerful weapon, watch me fumble around with it and not use it. Oh no, I was defeated, The end.
The only time I can remember Chibnall killing someone off, it was Benny.
Oh no. Benny!
Why can I not remember this? What episode
Orphan
is that?
55.
It's Orphan 55.
Oh god!
Oh wait, there's that girl's partner in Praxius, even though she's like kind of a bitch, I think.
Oh yeah, I guess.
There's more, but point being, it
I mean, that time he just killed the game.
True.
He spared one gay couple and killed the other, but whatever.
Bury half your gays? ?
Yeah. Oh my god, I forgot about Baines' fucking one-liner where there's a beggar and he's like, spare a penny, sir, and Baines like, I didn't spare you, and he just fucking murders this... like, Jesus. Another interesting thing I noticed is this also in some ways feels like more of a classic episode, and especially like, because it was originally written for 7, it almost feels like kind of like some of the episodes in the last two seasons of the show that are like darker and more gothic in tone, like Curse of Fenric, or not really Ghostlight, but like, yeah, it feels definitely classic-ier because the pacing is slower. In general, any two-parter is a really good way to make an episode feel classic here, because they have the ability to have slower pacing and But in this case, I think it's also kind of the more gothic vibe. But yeah, and I like here how it is just immediately shown that, like, the first time they get into a crisis situation all episode, John Smith literally does not know what to do and Martha has to do everything.
It's a nice little subversion, because we see earlier kind of a little bit of the Doctor leap out when he saves that woman from having her child crushed by a piano, I think. Like, that's a nice little thing, but it shows, by the end, you realize, like, that's just a small thing. When it comes to, like, the big tier shit, like, comparatively, like, he can't do anything, which is nice. It's a little, like, minor subversion that you don't really notice, but it's something I noticed in retrospect.
And Martha is just so competent. It's good. Like, God, she can, like, do things. Like, what the fuck? Like, she actually handles the situation and saves the Doctor's ass with, like, 0% Doctor help. And it's like, bro, that's so good.
Yeah, definitely. Let's see. Yeah, and then we have our cliffhanger. I guess actually we jumped ahead because Martha hasn't actually gotten really effective yet. But yeah, we had the cliffhanger where they hold both of them, both Martha and the nurse, at gunpoint. Yeah, that's our cliffhanger. Okay, so yeah, then Latimer distracts the family by opening the watch, which causes Martha to get the upper hand and just completely defuse this hostage situation by herself. We fucking stan.
Okay, and can we also talk about how Latimer is more competent as a person than Rose ever was? Like, this random-ass child is better serving Doctor than Rose ever could.
Yeah.
Like, goddamn.
Big Ferb energy.
Yeah, like, fucking, oh, God. Oh, yeah. The other note I had is this is a very good episode for Martha, to be in, because Bernice is also, like, super capable.
Yeah, the story would not have worked in the slightest with Rose.
Yeah, it needs someone like Martha or Ace or Bernice.
Is Bernice extended works only?
Yeah. She has not appeared on screen, though she's been extensively in books. She's actually Paul Cornell's character, and she's had books, appearances in, like, the VNAs, her own, like, series of books after they lost the license to the Doctor Who license, but still, like, had her license. She's been in plenty of Big Finish stuff. Yeah.
Might need to start standing.
Yeah, honestly, it would be kind of neat if, like, they did actually officially bring her on screen. Yeah, that too. Yeah, she canonically fucked 8 in a VNA.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah. It would be nice for her to actually appear on screen. That being said, I don't want it to happen with this showrunner. Unless he just gets like Paul Cornell to do an episode and, like, doesn't, like, Chibnall it.
True facts. True facts.
So yeah, then we get to the thing where they like get everyone up to sort of man the guns, and there's that scene where Baines and the headmaster talk, which is just great.
Do you think they'll thank you, sir, is like one of the favorite, like, I'd say underrated moments?
Yeah.
Maybe not underrated, but like it's not something that immediately jumps out to you, but I was just like, holy crap, I know it's a meme, the villain makes a good point meme, but like honestly.
Yeah, no, and it ties very much into the themes of this version of the episode.
Heartbreaking, the worst person you know says something you agree, or what is it? Says something
just made a great point. Heartbreaking, the worst person you know just made a great point.
Yeah. It's literally that. the anti-war baseness strikes again in this two-parter.
Yeah, no, definitely, and especially like for the one thing, like I find it interesting because on the one hand, like, it works very well with this because it is World War I, which is very universally agreed to have been absolutely stupid and fucking pointless. But I did see a contemporary review that was like, well, what if it was World War II and they were fighting fascism? And I thought about that for a while, and eventually I came with, well, the point of World War II is to fight fascism, which admittedly in some parts it was, if that was all that it is, then yeah, I agree with it, but it wasn't entirely, because Britain ignored Germany for years. They didn't deal with Germany until Germany actually started threatening them, and at the same time, teaching school kids to fight a war is fucked up. No matter what the cause is.
Yeah, it just really is. It sort of ties into the God, I can't believe I'm gonna reference Twitter discourse, but like, you know, there is sort of like, even with leftists, there's this sort of lionization of World War II as like the Allies infallibly being the good guys just because
it's totally possible to say that that World War II, in terms of dealing with Germany, that part was justified. However, actions that we did were not necessarily justified. We also did war crimes just like they did. We just won, so we didn't get prosecuted for it. And at the same time, a lot of it was politics and not just anti-fascism. Because, again, Neville Chamberlain ignored Germany for years because they weren't a threat to Britain, and they didn't do anything until they actually were a threat.
Same for the U.S., same for every other allied country, yeah.
Like, they let it get to the point that it did. Yeah, and then we get the scene of, on the one hand, yes, this may be slightly melodramatic, where they're all shooting at the scarecrows while crying and choir music is playing. At the same time, millions of people died in these fucking pointless wars. And I don't think this is melodramatic enough to detract from the fact that millions of people died in these fucking pointless wars.
I mean, but like, I think that criticism is really bad because it sort of misses that scene is supposed to be metaphorical. It's like it's literally
yes, it is somewhat cliched. At the same time, we keep saying war is bad and y'all motherfuckers don't get it.
Also, the fact that it kind of undermines how, you know, Latimer is kind of like pushed aside as like, oh, he doesn't have what it takes, but really that scene shows that like no one fucking has what it takes. Like, this is the first time they're doing this and they're all breaking down. Not all of them are like crying, but they're shaking and it's tense. It's showing the cost, not just like of, you know, collateral damage, which is all like fucking horrible, but like just the soul, the cost on the soul, that's like poetic, but whatever. So yeah, the choir music might have been a bit much, but at the same time, it's still like it's a relevant scene. I wouldn't take it out.
Yeah.
And even more so, the whole scene is like to me it came across as very metaphorical because they're forcing under like boys who are not close to being mature into like a literal trench fight against dehumanized figures.
Yeah.
That scene is
forcing these children into war. Yeah.
Is itself a metaphor for World War I, where they're sort of like, the enemy is dehumanized and they're just supposed to like mindlessly pump lead into them, but they just like, yeah.
Yeah. I also like the scene where Latimer and the other slightly less of a chud but still kind of chuddy guy are like, he's like, yeah, do this, and Latimer's like, no, because we don't die here, and I need to make sure that happens. But there's the line where he calls him a filthy coward, and Latimer's like, oh yes, sir, every time. Which I relate to. As someone whose, like, fight or flight response, like, heavily leans flight, I relate to immensely.
Yeah. And what is it? The line where Bates comes in and he's like, "Run away, little children!" I forget what he says, but that line is just very well sold.
Yeah. Also interesting, I will say I do like that. Despite the fact that he picks up the gun, like the doctor does not fire it. Once. Like, they pointedly show that he does not fire his gun.
And then that's a curious moment to me, because to me that shows, like, the human programming starting to break down into, like, underlying instincts starting to kick in.
Yeah, or like that even with the becoming a human who is conditioned as a human in this time period there is still an underlying moral sense that he can't break.
Yeah.
There is this underlying moral code of he may hold a gun, but he won't shoot it unless there is no other way.
It's like practically made text in the episode when, at the very end, she says he was braver than you in the end. It's like, he may have been human, and he may have been, like, in some ways subject to, like, the moral, I guess, acceptable moral standards of the time, but in the end, he did what the doctor would have done, and arguably better, in some ways. So, yeah, I jive with it.
Yeah. And then the headmaster gets disintegrated for not for being hypocritical and protecting the young white girl.
Oopsies.
I fucking bet you that he murdered innocent kids in Africa.
Oh no, absolutely.
It would have been nice. It would have been interesting if the show had actually brought up that hypocrisy, but that probably would have been too dark for they probably would not have been able to get away with that.
Yeah.
Perfect moment. Kind of wish it was her balloon.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it would kind of be a tone killer, but I just wanted the balloon to kill someone.
Oh god, I just had this mental image of like the balloon doing like a skirt around him. Have you seen the teleports behind you video with the robots? I want the balloon to do that to him, and it's like the balloon like flies through the air and does like a loop around behind him, and there's just like a freeze frame, and he's like, "What?" And he's like, "Nanny," and then the balloon just like explodes on him.
No, if the episode was entirely adapted and written by RTD, then the balloon would have killed him, because that is exactly the kind of camp shit RTD goes for.
God, that would have been awesome. Just like I wanted to no, the way RTD that's my idea of how it should be done. But the way RTD would do it is have the balloon encase him and just squeeze him to death or something.
Yeah, or it would have been like the fucking the ood electricity balls.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah. And then we get into sort of the climax of this episode, which I think is really just where they just pull out all the stops and this becomes a tour de force of acting where, he's acting this entire sort of moral quandary of the fact that John Smith is fundamentally, despite being built from fragments of the same personality, is a completely different person to the Doctor. And becoming the Doctor means that John Smith dies.
Yeah, that just hits hard.
Yeah,
it's very much this do you have the bravery to do this?
Yeah.
And then
and his questions of why can't I just be John Smith?
Yeah. And sort of the interaction afterwards where the nurse points out that John Smith was braver than the Doctor because John Smith was willing to give up his life. That part hit, that damn.
Yeah, you could easily spend hours on the ethics, because it's almost like when anti-abortions say it's a new life, that's literally a new life from the get-go, and just how from the moment his existence is temporary.
He's temporary.
Yeah.
More temporary than usual, let's say.
Yeah.
Because technically all existence is temporary.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But in comparison to immortality, it's
Yeah. Also, yet another thing of the side note of the episode being dark. The fact that they didn't show this on screen, which makes sense because I don't think they could get away with it. But the fact that Joan just kind of mentions that the member of the family that possessed this girl probably just fucking murdered her parents. It's just they probably didn't show that on screen because they wouldn't have gotten away with it, but the fact that they still mention it is whoo.
Yeah, it's a pretty woo.
Yeah.
Really
I completely forgot about that, or I never noticed it before.
Yeah. And also just the nurse having a good logic moment was yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I think Latimer's description of the Doctor here is interesting because, you get these bombastic descriptions of the Doctor, especially through Moffat era, but I think this is one of the more effective ones, though that might be my RTD bias speaking.
I think it's because it's used as a kind of... Again, what this story does really well is show how alien the Doctor is, especially for this incarnation.
It shows kind of how incomprehensible his existence is. He's almost I'm gonna have to invoke the shitty author, but how he's almost a Lovecraftian figure when you think about it.
Yeah, it's not used as a "I'm the Doctor, I win" button.
Yeah, it's impossible for the human mind to comprehend what the Doctor's existence is like.
What you say about him being Lovecraftian is really interesting because that's the exact vibe I got from Latimer's description of him. Where it's what does he say again? I forget the whole speech.
He's like fire and ice and rage. He's like the night and the storm in the heart of the sun. He is ancient and forever. He burns at the center of time and he can see the turn of the universe and he's wonderful.
That is very Lovecraftian Eldritch sort of descriptions. The way he's described there is almost like an eldritch god or something.
Yeah.
And then the way he doles out punishment is again like an eldritch god almost.
Yeah. And I also like how he takes the watch and starts to slip back in and is absolutely horrified by how he talks.
Yeah.
and how he calls everyone, he calls Martha out and he calls himself out for putting himself in this situation.
Yeah, it's just...
And how the concept of falling in love didn't even occur to him. Which is I think that's the other reason why this couldn't have worked with Rose.
Yeah.
Because it needs the Doctor to not be, like, romantically attached to someone.
Even though the show itself never really showed that and just sort of said it.
No, it was there. It's the same thing as, like, with 12 and Clara, where it's there, they just don't talk about it, and both of them sort of mutually understand that it is a thing while being unspoken. Except that 12 and Clara did it better, hot take. Yeah, especially the line where he says, your job was to execute me. Like, how this sets up, like, its moral quandaries is, like, it's amazing how deep, like, you can think through all of this for what is ostensibly a family show. I'm not, like, it's not a full-on kid show, because that's more like Sarah Jane Adventures, but generally acceptable for all ages who are old enough to not get, like, terrified and run away. Like, I don't think I ever really noticed how deep any of this went until I started watching it again as a teen and as an adult.
Yeah, it's very... I don't know, it's not quite on the same level of having, like, an existential crisis, but, like, it's literally, like, all that I am, all that I thought I could be, is just, like, a cover for this guy, and don't I have any rights? It's, you know, damn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And how his relationship with Joan plays out, both here and in his last scene with her, is just... I don't know, maybe... Actually, yeah. Is up there with, I think, like, Ten's reunion with Sarah Jane as, like, a literally perfect scene.
Oh, definitely.
Let's see, what else? Oh yeah, and then obviously, like, 10 tricks them into blowing their own ship up. And another interesting thing too, in some ways, despite obviously, like, all of this being, like, less gory and somewhat toned down compared to the book, interestingly enough, in the book, the aliens just die, or are, like, they're, like, taken out through the course of the story. Not necessarily by Seven, but they are taken out. The whole cruel mercy aspect of the end of this was entirely created for this adaptation.
Well, I definitely prefer this better.
Yeah, no, it's interesting too, because, like, the cruel mercy thing fits Seven so much better, and I find it interesting that they just get killed off in the book. But yeah, no, and obviously so much has been said about this end, where the you know, he never raised his voice, the fury of a Time Lord, and the fact that he ran not because he was scared, but because he was being kind. So much has been said about this scene that just, like, yeah, I feel like the last, like, in general, I think these episodes are definitely, I think, personally, even more than Blink, the standout 10 out of 10s of this. Like, Blink is good, but I just think this is, despite Blink having the neat concept, this is just so much better. And Blink's still probably going to be a 10 out of 10, but just, this is just on a whole nother level. And I think just, like, the last 15 minutes of this episode is just perfect scene, perfect scene, perfect scene.
Oh yeah, I think benefit this episode has, or this story has, over Blink is that nothing's in hindsight. The Weeping Angels have kind of like run their course, and here,
Blink is they're two different sort of paradigms of like good Doctor Who episodes. Blink is a good Doctor Who episode because it comes up with an interesting alien threat that is actually scary and novel, or at least was novel at the time, and is handled in an interesting way. This is a good Doctor Who episode because of the quality of its writing and its thematic elements and how deep its moral quandaries go.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And then, yes, another perfect scene, the last scene with Joan and the Doctor, where he asks her to come with him, and she very bluntly is like, no, I can't do that. John Smith is dead and you look like him, is one of the best lines in this episode.
Oh yeah, this whole scene is poetry. The fact that he's basically unfazed by her grief, and maybe he just refuses to acknowledge it until the very end when it's clear, but it's like you see how he turns on that Doctor charm, and because she's experienced the human authentic version of it.
Yeah. And it's like people shit on Tennant for being like sort of overly manic and human and not quite having that element, but I think this scene proves that that's not entirely the case, because this scene kind of proves that it's almost an act, or like it's something where it does, like, he's got that kind of fun charm, but he can't turn it off and necessarily act serious when it's not something that doesn't directly affect him.
Yeah, and it's a good subversion, because I have levied that critique of Ten in the past, but the fact that he's reacting to this like very understandable emotion from Redford, and he's just kind of like ignoring it and being like his alien self in some way, I don't think it would work. Until she just
straight up says to him, if you hadn't came, would anyone have died? And that like completely shuts him up, and he can't come up with an answer to that.
Yeah, and yeah, it's great, because I don't think, as weird as this sounds, I don't think this would work with 11 or 12, despite them to differing degrees being more alien than 10 is in different ways, just because like you would expect that from them in some instance, particularly with like early 12, no question, but with 10 it's like, well damn, like who is this guy?
And obviously it still works with 7 because of how much of a contrast there is, but no, definitely. And then, yes, the scene where they say goodbye to Latimer, and then they go to World War I, and then have the war memorial at the end, which was this week. This week it was the Doctor Who episode that made me cry, and not the Torchwood one.
Hey.
But yeah, just everything about how this episode like reaches like everything about the third act of this episode is literally perfect, and the episode itself is still good. Like, yeah, it's somewhat slow paced, but that worked. But I think just like how this is, the last 15 minutes is paced and acted and written, is just literally perfect.
Agreed.
I don't have a single negative that I could levy at it. Yeah. Anything else for anyone before we move on to ratings?
Nope.
All right. So yeah, as I said, I've gushed about this episode for like an hour and a half at this point. it is like I've gushed about this episode for as long as the episode runtime is. It is just, or maybe slightly shorter after editing, because we did have technical difficulties and a break. But yeah, no, it's just, the acting is fantastic. It's a brilliant adaptation of a story written for a doctor who is completely different, and it still manages to work and be just as effective. As I said, acting is fantastic. It's terrifying. It's one of the darker Doctor Who episodes. It's so deep in its moral questions that it asks, and its thematic elements. Just 10 out of 10. One of easily like top 3, maybe even. Yeah, I don't know if this would beat School Reunion. Maybe I think it's actually this is like very closely tied with School Reunion, probably for my favorite ever.
Nice. Yeah, this is like a masterpiece or magnum opus. Like, they're kind of both overused, but this episode earns, or these episodes, this story, I can talk, earns those accolades. I've heard it called the best story of the New Who era, and while I don't know if I necessarily agree, I can definitely see the argument. If someone told me that, I'd be like, I definitely understand why. It's a great deconstruction of the Doctor, and just excellent use of, like, every element of the TV medium is firing on all cylinders. The acting, the pacing, the writing for TV, particularly as an adaptation, because those can go wrong in so many ways. But this, I never knew this was an adaptation. It never felt like something was missing, and that's a sign of a great adaptation, where it feels full despite coming from something else. 10 out of 10 all the way.
It's a good episode, and I like when the shitty white boy smirks. 10 out of 10.
Fair enough. Side note, actually, I was going to mention this earlier, but during like the last few bits where they were talking about the quandary of the difference between John Smith and the Doctor, and especially the line of John Smith died and you're wearing his face, I kept thinking of the David Bowie song, the man who sold the world.
Nice.
Yeah. Anyways, so yeah, next week we will be talking about one of the other most critically acclaimed episodes of the show, Blink. Yeah. Until then, now we're going to move on to our next segment. So yeah, today we are talking about Series 1, Episode 11, Combat. So yeah, the interesting thing about this episode is this was written by Noel Clarke, who is the actor who plays Mickey, and making him the first Doctor Who actor to write a script for an official episode of something in the Doctor Who universe, and remains the only one. Now I feel like this. So I guess to preface this kind of has a reputation of just being Weevil Fight Club. But I will say that I still liked it. Now, that being said, I haven't actually seen or read Fight Club, so I probably am missing like the fact of like I don't know like really how truly derivative it is. But even then, I would say that like the real like Weevil. the real Weevil Fight Club part of it is only like the last 15 minutes, and the first 30 minutes of it are still pretty good. I will say, obviously, like, the showrunner has some, like, a lot more say over some stuff and rewrites a lot of stuff, but I will say I'm going to go with the benefit of the doubt and assume that most of this was Noel Clarke, except for maybe some of the stuff that was, like, more connected to the like the ongoing plot of like the fallout from Out of Time, and maybe like some of Gwen and Reese's relationship.
Okay, so as someone who has seen Fight Club, it is very much like Fight Club. Basically, because basically the whole point of Fight Club in Fight Club is it's like a bunch of dispossessed white guys who are mad at the world and like have to get their anger out. So it's literally
who are mad at the world and don't understand that their problem isn't because the world is inherently empty. It's because capitalism has made the world so fucked.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, there are definitely like some anti-capitalist undertones in Fight Club, because literally the climax is Tyler Durden blowing up a bank to wipe out that of debt.
I couldn't hear Avery at all or right now in any part of that for some reason.
Yeah, I can hear him. That's weird.
Huh. The curse.
Fucking
yeah, keep going. I still can't hear.
Yeah, keep going.
Alright, so I mean, yeah, it is the people who really like it kind of miss that. I mean, I like Fight Club, and I'm not a shitty weird white guy, but the shitty weird white guys who really like it tend to sort of miss the anti-capitalist
and miss that in some ways it is kind of a satire and a critique of toxic masculinity. Yeah,
and I mean, honestly, like, I see some criticism of the, like, plurality aspect of it, but, like, I think it's fine. Because to me, Tyler Durden isn't a villain. I'm getting into an analysis of Fight Club now.
Yeah.
But, like, just as sort of an aside, I don't see Tyler Durden as a villain. I think it's an unfair reading of him. I think the plurality portrayal is alright. Anyways, this episode draws a lot from Fight Club.
Yeah.
What can
but
I say?
I will say, at least it takes... I think it takes a as I said, like the only real like parts that kind of really jump out as Fight Clubby like don't happen until like the third act of the story. Like the actual setup and a lot of the meat of the story isn't just Weevil Fight Club. Because I actually forgot, like, for some reason in my brain, like, the fact that, like, there's, like, 30 minutes of them figuring out what the hell is going on was condensed, and the Weevil Fight Club part was way longer in, like, my memories of the episode. But, no, it's not. Like, it's the last 15 minutes of the episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't overstay its welcome. As far as episodes of a television show written by actors, whether they be former actors of that show or current, like this is more than fine. I've definitely seen way worse, and I don't know if Noel Clarke has like continued to write for anything, but I wouldn't be mad if he did. So
yeah, I will say, I mean, this might just be me being the token lawful good in, like, basically every friend group, but, like, the second, like, Gwen, like, retconned Reese, I was like, oh, ew.
Oh, same. Mood.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was bad.
Yeah. Now, admittedly, I think it's honestly it's kind of hard to tell like how much of it is her actually being remorseful or how much of it is her realizing like, oh shit, like I'm not going to be blanket forgiven for doing a shitty thing.
Drug time. Yeah, that was... I don't know. You could debate what's the most morally reprehensible thing Gwen has done so far.
It's
this. Yeah,
this.
Yeah. I was being charitable, but yeah, this is like Owen tier shittiness, and it's rare so far that other characters have reached Owen tier.
Yeah, and like I feel like oh man, what was I gonna? Oh yeah, I feel like Owen actually doesn't do nearly as much shitty stuff, and I think this is another like interesting kind of good character development episode for him. In the sense that like it's rare when I like Owen in an episode more than I like Gwen. I'll just put it that way.
Take a drink.
Also, fucking. Oh man. Oh yeah. Okay. I guess this might be minor spoil. No, actually, no. It's not. It's the spoilers of an absence of a thing going on. I'm just going to say this now. This pisses me off. There is never. I don't think Reese ever actually gets officially told for reals about Gwen and Owen, and there's never any actual consequences for it. Ever.
Oof. I don't like that.
Which, yeah, it feels weird because of how prominent a plot point it is in this season, and they just forget about it completely. It's whack as fuck. Like, it might even be they forget about it after this episode, and it doesn't, or if it does play into the finale, it's something that gets undone, or he doesn't, or he forgets or something. Yeah, it's fucking whack.
That's like my least favorite tendency of like, if you're gonna have a show like this that like one of its staples is that you can do more like string continuity stuff of like having arcs carry over from time to time, and then you do that and then you drop it. It's just like, well, why then?
I mean, I will 100% say that the series finale for this season is fucking trash, but yeah, they just completely forget about it, and it's really weird. But that the series finale is also like a mess that like comes up with interesting plot things and then just has them happen completely off screen because they've like ran out of budget and shit. So like, yeah, it's weird. Yeah. Anything else?
No.
I think I'm good.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Weevil Fight Club, 7 out of 10.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's not bad, but like again, in comparison to what we just talked about, it's kind of
it's 7. I don't really have anything to say about it. It's 7 out of 10. It is a perfectly functional 45-minute episode of television that moves people's arcs along and is entertaining for the 45 minutes that you watch it. 7 out of 10. Weevil Fight Club.
Couldn't have said it better myself. 7 out of 10.
Pee pee poo poo, 7 out of 10.
So yeah, next week we're going to be covering the last 2 episodes of Series 1 to make sure that we are all done with Torchwood by the time that Jack rejoins the main crew in Utopia. So yeah, next week we're going to be covering Blink and the episodes Captain Jack Harkness and End of Days, and then the week after that we will be talking about the full we will be talking about Utopia, Sound of Drums, and Last of the Time Lords together in just one big mega episode with no Torchwood that week. So yeah. Until then, you can follow the podcast on Twitter at B2TARDISPod. You can also support us on Patreon to get access to listening parties, bonus episodes early, and other benefits. As for bonus episodes, we'll probably be recording another one of those after we finish Series 3, because we're going to be covering, like, a lot of shit over the next few weeks, so yeah. Until then, I'm Geoff. You can find me on Twitter at WheatleyDL, and I stream on Twitch at WheatleyDLT.
I am Baines' Petrified Face Muscles. You can find me at skyhigh9_5 on letwitter.com.
I really need to pee, and you can find me at BigFatPenis69.
And we will see you all next week.